Child goes to police station to plead for dad's arrest. The truth is shocking. It was a rainy afternoon in the small town, the kind of day when people stayed inside, hoping for a little warmth. Inside the local police station, Officer Daniel sat at his desk, gazing out the window as raindrops slid down the glass. The station was quiet, almost too quiet, with only the faint hum of the heater filling the air. He sipped his coffee, expecting nothing more than routine calls and paperwork. But then the front door swung open with a gust of cold wind. A small figure stood there, drenched from head to toe, shivering slightly. It was a boy, no older than 6 or 7, with wide, scared eyes and a soaked hoodie clinging to his small frame. He clutched a worn stuffed animal tightly, as if it were his only source of comfort. Officer Daniel set down his coffee and approached him, his brow furrowed with concern. He knelt down in front of the boy, offering a gentle smile. The boy's lips quivered as he whispered, "I want you to arrest my daddy." Daniel's smile faded, replaced with a look of confusion. He glanced toward the other officers who were now watching closely, a mixture of curiosity and concern on their faces. The boy's voice was barely audible as he repeated, "Daddy, ouch." Welcome back to PlotTwister. Before we unravel today's mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you're always in the loop. Daniels felt a chill run through him that had nothing to do with the rain outside. He reached out, guiding the boy to a chair and wrapping a blanket around his small shivering shoulders. He handed the boy a cup of warm cocoa, trying to calm him. But the boy's hands trembled, spilling a little on the table. His face was pale, his eyes darting around the room, reaching for something, or maybe someone. Daniels exchanged a look with Captain Reese, who stood there nearby with a worried frown. They had seen many things in their years at the station, but never a child walking in like this, alone and scared. The air in the room felt heavy, and Daniels' mind raced with questions. Who was this boy? What kind of danger had brought him here, soaked and desperate, asking for his own father's arrest? He knew one thing for sure. Whatever the boy had experienced, it was serious, and they needed to find out more. But as the rain beat against the windows, the truth remained hidden, just beyond their reach. Daniel sat beside the boy, offering a comforting presence, even as his own thoughts swirled with unease. Officer Daniels led Jacob, the boy, to a quieter room at the back of the station. The air was warm, but Jacob continued to shiver, clutching his stuffed animal as though it was the only thing keeping him steady. Daniels tried to keep his voice gentle, offering a small smile to ease the boy's obvious fear. He asked Jacob why he wanted his daddy arrested, but the boy seemed to shrink at the question. He stared down at his hands, twisting the ears of the stuffed animal. Finally, in a voice so quiet that Daniels had to lean closer to hear, Jacob said that his daddy heard him. He paused, his small face tightening, and then added, "He hurts mommy too." Daniels felt a pang of anger, trying to keep his emotions in check as he listened. He asked Jacob what he meant, but the boy struggled to find the words. Instead, he whispered about the bad nights at home, the shouting, the breaking glass, and the nights when his mom cried after his dad drank too much. Jacob's eyes filled with tears as he told Daniels that he sometimes hid in his closet, pressing his hands over his ears, hoping it would all just stop. Daniels tried to keep his voice steady, telling Jacob he was safe now, but his mind was already racing. He had heard these kinds of stories before, but it never got easier. As he listened, he noticed how the boy flinched whenever he mentioned his father's name, like he expected someone to burst into the room at any moment. Just then, Captain Reese stepped into the room, signaling for Daniels to join him outside. Daniels assured Jacob he'd be right back, leaving him with a comforting pat on the shoulder. Outside, Reese's face was grim. He mentioned that they needed to call Child Protective Services, but Daniels insisted they needed more details before making any decisions. When he returned to Jacob, Daniel spoke more softly, trying to coax more from him. Bit by bit, Jacob revealed that he didn't want anyone to be angry at his dad. He just wanted the ouches to stop. The more the boy spoke, the more confusion filled Daniel's mind. He sensed that there was something more, something the boy couldn't quite explain. Daniels couldn't shake the feeling that the situation wasn't as simple as it seemed. Jacob's voice grew softer, his words trailing off into silence. Daniels watched the boy's face, trying to piece together the truth from his small, frightened expressions. As Jacob sat quietly, Officer Daniels stepped out to the main area, where Jacob's mother, Lisa, had just arrived. Her eyes were red, her hair tangled from the rain, and she looked desperate around the room until she spotted Jacob through the glass door. She tried to rush to him, but Captain Reese held up a hand asking her to speak with them first. Lisa's voice cracked as she pleaded with them, insisting she needed to take her son home. Daniel studied her, seeing the exhaustion and fear etched into her face. He asked why Jacob would be so frightened of his own father. But she quickly shook her head, her hands twisting together nervously. She claimed it was a misunderstanding, that Jacob had been struggling since Mike, her husband, lost his job. She said he had a wild imagination and sometimes got upset over little things. But Daniels noticed the way her voice trembled, how she avoided eyes when she spoke about Mike. He pressed gently, asking if she was afraid. Lisa hesitated, glancing back at the room where Jacob sat, then dropped her gaze. She insisted everything was fine, but the way she clutched her coat betrayed her nerves. Daniels could see the conflict in her eyes. He knew she was hiding something, but she seemed caught between protecting her son and protecting her husband. He asked her about the arguments at home, about the drinking Jacob mentioned. She flinched at the question, her lips pressing into a thin line. Then, barely above a whisper, she admitted that things had been difficult, that Mike sometimes lost control. Daniel's gut tightened as he watched Lisa's face, the pain she tried so hard to hide. She confessed that there had been nights when she'd thought about leaving, but then Mike would promise to change, to do better. She would cling to those promises, even when they kept breaking. Daniels could see the fear in her eyes, but he also saw something else, a deep, weary love, a desperate hope that things could get better. As Lisa spoke, Daniels felt a chill settle over her. He could see the struggle she faced, the weight of wanting to protect both her son and the man she still loved. But in her desperation, he could sense that she wasn't telling the full truth. And Jacob, sitting alone in the room, seemed to know something that neither of them was ready to fully face. Daniels took a deep breath, knowing that whatever the real story was, it was far from over. Officer Daniels returned to the room where Jacob sat, the small boy's eyes darting up when the door creaked open. He knelt down beside Jacob, speaking softly, trying to create a sense of safety. He asked again about the ouches, wanting to understand what the boy meant. Jacob looked away, clutching his stuffed animal even tighter, his small hands wringing its worn years. He hesitated, then whispered that he was scared his dad would hurt himself. Daniels paused, not quite understanding. He asked Jacob if his dad had ever hurt him or his mom. Jacob shook his head slowly, then stopped, as if unsure. He described his father's yelling and how he would throw things when he was upset. But then he said something that caught Daniels off guard. Jacob mentioned seeing his dad cry in the garage and fall down when he thought no one was watching. Daniels frowned, the pieces of the story rearranging themselves in his mind. As Jacob continued, he described his dad's long nights alone, the empty bottles scattered on the garage floor. He said his mom would try to talk to him, but his dad would just shout at her to leave. Jacob's voice trembled as he admitted he was afraid that one night his dad wouldn't get back up. The fear in the boy's eyes was raw and real, the child's terror of losing a parent in a way he couldn't fully understand. Daniel's chest tightened as he realized what Jacob had been trying to say all along. This wasn't about bruises or yelling alone. It was about a father lost in a struggle with himself, with demons that the young boy couldn't name but desperately wanted to save him from. Jacob thought that if the police could take his dad away, maybe they could make the pain stop, for all of them. As Daniels processed this, Captain Reese pulled him aside, updating him on Lisa's strained account of their home life and Mike's worsening behavior. Daniels shared what he learned from Jacob, and they both began to see the story from a new angle. It wasn't just about the child's fear. It was about a father on the brink, a family caught in a storm that had no easy solution. With a heavy heart, Daniels looked back at the room where Jacob sat. The boy's small plea for help wasn't just about his own safety. It was about trying to hold his family together, even when everything was falling apart. Daniels knew now that their next steps had to be about more than just separating a father from his son. It was about finding a way to bring light into the darkness that had settled over this family. Officer Daniels took a deep breath and walked back into the room where Jacob waited. He knelt beside the boy again, trying to hide the heaviness he felt in his chest. He told Jacob that everything would be okay, that they were going to help his dad. Jacob looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes, searching his face for any sign of hope. Outside the room, Captain Reese spoke quietly with Lisa and Mike, who had arrived in a rush. Mike's face was drawn, his eyes bloodshot, and his hands clenched tightly at his sides. He shifted nervously, glancing at his wife, and then back at the closed door where his son sat. The tension between them was palpable, thick with unspoken words and lingering fears. Daniels joined them, explaining that they didn't want to take Mike away, but they did want to get him help. He described the support they could provide, how they could connect him with people who understood what he was going through. Mike's tough exterior cracked, and he finally admitted, in a voice barely more than a whisper, that he didn't know how to stop hurting, that he felt like he was losing everything. Lisa reached out, her hand finding his, and for a moment the storm between them seemed to calm. She told him she didn't want to lose him either, that they both needed him to fight, not just for himself, but for Jacob. Tears welled up in Mike's eyes as he looked back at her, the weight of his struggles finally showing in his face. Meanwhile, Jacob watched through the window, seeing his parents talking quietly with the officers. Daniels opened the door, kneeling again beside the boy, explaining that his dad wasn't going to be taken away, but instead, he would be getting the help he needed. Jacob's small face softened with relief, and for the first time he smiled, a shy, hopeful smile that made the shadows around him seem a little lighter. Later, as the family walked out of the station together, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The sky cleared just enough for a sliver of sun to peek through. Mike held Jacob's hand tightly, and Lisa walked beside her, her arm around her husband's shoulder. Daniels watched them go, feeling a flicker of hope in his chest, knowing that while their road ahead wouldn't be easy, it was a road they'd be walking together. He turned back to the station, the warmth of the scene lingering with him. For once, the outcome wasn't about loss or separation, but about finding a way forward. A way for a father to heal, a mother to hope, and a little boy to feel safe again. And that Daniels thought was something worth believing in. What are your thoughts on the twist we uncovered today? Comment your ideas below. Make sure to like and subscribe for a daily dose of drama and mystery. See you later with another twist.